What is up, everybody? You are listening to Living Beyond the Dream podcast, a podcast where we're having practical conversations to take the dreams you have for your church and yourself and turn it into a reality. My name is Mike, joined by my man, like every week, Tyler.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing, rating, reviewing. You're meaning the world to us, and it's such a blessing. We love hearing your comments. We love getting your feedback, and we love that we get to spend this time with you every single week. Tyler, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, today we're going to be talking about a really nuts and bolts topic here, but we're going to be talking about leadership structures within departments. But to interject it real quick, you won't be able to fully understand this concept until you understand first what a major priority of a leader is. And so, Mike, what would you say one of the top leadership needs of a leader is?
I'd say one of the top needs is identifying potential in people and helping disciple that as they become leaders that can develop and identify potential in other leaders.
Yeah.
So we have to learn the art of multiplication, which we are going to build up leaders that can build up leaders that multiplies our impact over just adding people to our team and us doing all the work ourselves.
Yeah.
So we've got to learn that this is a team sport, not an individual sport.
Yeah.
We need a team around us. We need competent, powerful leaders around us that help us build the kingdom of God together.
Yeah.
So you've got to see, identify, and develop leaders within your organization.
Yeah. How would you say Bloom has done this, like creating leaders that develop leaders?
Well, a couple things. We've made it a really strong priority here that I don't want doers, I want leaders.
Yeah.
So we've made it this priority to realize that you can't do everything yourself.
Yeah.
And you need people around you, and we're better when we have leaders around us.
Yeah.
We do more together. We make a difference better together. So it's a cultural statement for them to understand, I don't want to catch you doing everything yourself.
Yeah.
I want you building teams. I want you investing in leaders, and I want you helping expand your impact and influence, not your individual, your departments, your impact and influence through all the volunteers in the organization. So it's a cultural thing. I tell our staff, I say, if I catch you doing everything by yourself, you're not going to have a place here at this church.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is limiting. You're limiting the person that you're not elevating and championing. You're limiting your overall impact, and we need to be multiplying that.
Yeah.
So we've made that a cultural statement here at Bloom.
That's so good. What would you say you've put in place to do that structurally?
Well, what we've done is we've said you need to identify areas in your department and then start raising up people to kind of fill areas of those places.
Yeah.
And a great way to describe that is we call them our lead teams.
Yeah.
So we have our people that are over the department, and then they have lead teams underneath them. These are a group of people that run the areas of that department.
Yeah.
And because every department should have different areas that can be broken down in. And you, as the overall head of that department, can't literally run every single area and do it effectively over the long term.
Yeah.
And so you need people helping you, i.e., let's look at a kids department.
Yeah.
You have the whole kids department, but how many people know there's many different age brackets within a kids department? And within those age brackets, there's different ways of lessons because a baby is going to learn a lot differently than a third grader is, right?
Yeah.
There's different lessons. There's different activities that need to go in, different snacks, different training for volunteers. Everything's different. So you need to be able to have this identifying that there's areas of your place and putting people in charge of those areas that they can help run and making the entire department as a whole, i.e. kids, flourish because you've broken it down.
Yeah.
So you need to identify all of that and break that down to be able to equip people.
Okay, so I want to talk about that, and I want to get really practical on the lead teams because
Okay.
I think it's an awesome idea and an awesome structure. Is there a maximum or a minimum amount of positions that you need to create, or how do you even identify that?
I'm not going to give you a numerical number because I don't think that's really strategic. But here's what I will say. There is a place where you need to start not just going extremely wide, but you can start going deep and wide.
That's good.
So let me explain that.
Yeah.
You are running, if you're on the org chart, you're running the department. you're going to have positional leaders underneath you, which is your main lead team. They're going to run the general areas of your department. But then those areas may be broken down even smaller within those areas that they're going to start developing lead teams within their department.
Yeah.
So now you have a lead team that now they have lead teams, right? And they're now breaking down areas. So the amount of lead team people, no, there is not a limit on that. The amount of lead team people that are directly reporting to you, yes.
Yeah.
So you need to understand that because you need to create leaders that want to develop leaders, right? And they're going to identify leaders that they can start developing and equipping and empowering and giving areas so that we can run more effectively.
Yeah.
There's not a minimum because here's the thing. If you're small, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So starting with one person, that turns into 2, that then turns into 4. Yes, you just need to start somewhere. You need to identify somebody that's potential and start somewhere. Because maybe your department's not a very large department right now. I'm not going to tell you not to start big until you have 5 people or 3 people. No, if you need to identify potentials in someone and then bring them in and let them be your right-hand person and then develop another person and let them come in and take over an area. So what you're trying to do is identify things and then place people in the right seats.
I love that. And I love the idea of going deeper, not wider. I think it's really important that people have to understand that you're creating leaders that create leaders that create leaders. Like that doesn't just stop. You're not creating leaders that create doers.
That's right.
But you have to keep building those teams and go deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's where discipleship really
well, you're going deep and wide at the same time.
Yeah.
And so if you just go wide, you go shallow.
Ooh.
And so what you're trying to do is add depth and width at the same time. That's going to give the stability, right?
Yeah.
Think about a tree. A tree, if it was just shallow roots, would always top over once it got too big for itself. But it's the fact that the roots go deep and wide. It gives it stability. So as the organization, the tree grows, it can sustain the weight of what the organization is. That's the reason why a lot of churches or organizations aren't growing is because they don't have the stability, the roots underneath the soil to handle the growth. Or what happens is sometimes they hit explosive growth, but then they topple over, they crumble, they can't hold the weight of it because they don't have the structure in place to be able to sustain that.
Yeah.
So unless you get this, that's why I say start now, even if you're small, because you need to start building that into your culture so that as your organization continues to grow, you're getting the stability to handle that growth.
Yeah, that's really good. So let's say you're a leader out there, you're hearing this for the first time now, and you're like, man, that is such a good idea. What would you say to a leader that wants to implement a lead team? What is their first thing that they need to give their lead team?
Well, the first thing you need to do before you give your lead team anything is you need to identify what are the areas in your department.
Yeah.
So you need to say, okay, well, I got to break my thing down. Okay. If I'm say I run a worship department, I need to break this thing down.
Yeah.
I have a production team, right? I have a recruitment team. I have a team that would be music development, right?
Yeah.
It's going to implement the new musicians and new singers that come in to get them in place. I've got a musical director that helps keep the band in place, or the vocal director.
Yeah.
Right? These are all areas you can identify as positions. And I'm not a worship leader, so there's maybe more. I may be spouting off things I don't know. Hypothetically, right? Some of these words like, no. As I'm drinking my single origin coffee and my, worship leaders, right? That's how they are. So, but
So true, though.
Yeah. Wearing my scarf. Okay. Deeply profound in my leather-bounded journal, writing my worship poems to God. Okay, enough on these worship leaders.
But we love our worship leaders.
Where are my Toms? They helped a kid in Africa. Okay. But what you need to do is identify the different areas in your department.
Yeah.
Now, you're not going to hand off everything right away, right? But now that you've identified them, as you start seeing potential in people, you start seeing, okay, I want to develop them towards this, right? I'm not necessarily going to give it to them because I see the potential, but I know that's where I want to develop them towards.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start giving them some responsibilities in that area. I'm going to personally invest in them. I'm going to encourage them. I'm going to spend some time with them, and I'm going to get to a place where I feel like they can fit that role,
Yeah.
and then I can hand something over to them.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen is now my job is keeping them accountable, goal setting with them, making sure they're healthy, developing them, and they're going to keep their areas now growing. So now as we continue to expand the department, I can actually have the manpower and the ability to expand it. Because if the department expands, but I'm the only one doing it, things are going to fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
Details are going to get missed. People are going to get frustrated because you're not organized. You're going to lose volunteers because nothing frustrates a volunteer more than when they're giving up their precious time. You're not organized. You're not prepared. Details are missed. You don't even think about them. Nobody thinks about them. They're going to leave.
Yeah.
And so when you're doing this, is you're creating the stability to handle it. But you first got to identify the areas of your department that needs to be filled or that need to be covered.
Yeah, that's really good. After you identify those areas, tell me about the importance of a job description there.
Well, yes. You can't just say, I want you in charge of musical direction.
Yeah.
Okay, what does that mean?
Exactly.
Right? You've got to say, this is the area I want you over.
Yeah.
These are kind of the things that you must do inside that area. Like, these are the things weekly I want you to do. On monthly, I want you to do. These are kind of the development tools you need to work on with your people.
Yeah.
These are the check-in system. Like, you need to go through and say, okay, in this role, this is what I'm expecting of someone.
Yeah.
It needs to be written down and handed to them.
Yep.
You don't verbally spout it.
Yeah.
People forget. People hypothetically assume. And then they will make a conclusion about something you never concluded yourself.
Yeah.
You need to write it down. These are my expectations. This is the covenant I want that you're going to sign, along with an honor code.
Yeah.
That says these are the standards of a person, of a leader that our church reflects.
Yeah.
These are what we require of it, and I want you to sign it. I'm going to sign it, and we're in this agreement together.
Yeah.
And some people might say, "Hey, I like being in your department. I don't want to be a leader. Or I don't want that responsibility." That's fine. But by having that clarification, you're not going to have somebody agree to it and then go, well, I didn't agree to that much.
Exactly.
Now you can set that expectation up front, so now there's clarity moving forward when you have accountability with them.
Yeah, that's huge. Accountability with expectation is awesome. Do you think, looking at the departments, and you've been in this world for a while now, do you see any positions that are, that each department has the same position in there?
I don't know if every department has the same. I think there's a couple areas that as you get to a certain size probably needs to be in there the same. I think a recruiter is probably important for every department.
Yeah.
When you're smaller, maybe you're not going to have that position yet because you're just finding leaders and putting in place. But I think it's a powerful role to have in all of them because we're a volunteer organization.
Yeah.
We're trying to get people in serving, but not only just getting bodies in there. We want to get the right people in the right places.
Yeah.
So it's great to have someone there that's saying, hey, this is how we do it. This is our orientation process. Let's get you involved and make it a special moment getting plugged in. It's a great one. Social media is a big one for a lot of departments. Worship teams run social media. Kids run social media. Youth run social media. Like all these departments, that's a big one that we live in a day and age that 10 years ago, this wasn't even a concept.
Yeah.
So it's a big area to be fulfilled in. So there's several of those. I think care is a big one.
Yeah.
Making sure that just generally we're dealing with an HR level inside each department. As you get going and you start running 80, 100, 150 people in one department, that's like a company.
Yeah.
Per department. We have some departments, that's where they're running at, right? With just in their department, that's how many, they have triple digit number volunteers. Well, there's going to be HR issues that arise.
Yeah.
There's going to be care issues that need to arise. And so you're going to want to have people in place that you can be keeping a pulse on it and hearing what's going on and dealing with that. So those are general areas that could be placed in all roles.
Yeah, that's really good.
I mean, you work a lot with the departments. Is those areas or other areas you've identified?
No, I think you nailed it with those three. I think recruiting is super important, but I do believe you're right. You have to be at that. You have to be at a level where you're not fishing, but you're actually just building it and
placing them.
I think that's good. So let's talk about, from your standpoint, working closely with the departments from a hiring standpoint. What does this culture do to your hiring pipeline?
It's everything.
Yeah.
We have yet to ever hire somebody outside of our church. So we always hire within. And by doing that, And I'm not saying it's bad if you hire without. I'm just saying by doing that with us, we know what culture we're placing in place, right?
Yeah.
Because these people are inundated in our culture. They love our church. They love what we're about. That's kind of a natural fit when they're creating things. They've already been creating for our culture.
Yeah.
So it's already placement there. They've already been discipled by us. They know what our systems are. They understand what the vision and where we're going. So it's a natural fit or a more natural fit to place someone and not let elevation and allow promotions to happen within the organization. So this is really important. But I'm going to put a little disclaimer out there.
Yeah.
You have to learn to lead open-handedly.
Yeah.
And just because you raise someone up and you invest in them, but they feel called to go somewhere else, you can't hold on with them white-knuckly.
Yeah.
You can't be all angry or frustrated that they leave. Yes, you can be sad because you love them and you want them around there, but you have to ultimately want the best for them.
Yeah.
And God told me this a long time ago, lead open-handedly.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to me. If I keep my fist closed and try to hold on to everything, I leave no room to let God pour anything into my life.
Wow.
Because I've literally closed it off. But if I lead open-handedly and people come, people go, I allow God to continue to pour freshness into myself and the organization I lead. So I got to learn this, and you got to learn that art. Sometimes there's people I've raised up as mentors, and they went to be on staff at other churches or left. That's just what you do, right? We're going to lead open-handedly, champion them on. But it's great for promotions within your organization also.
Yeah. So looking back at this, I mean, have you always had lead teams at Bloom?
Never, no.
So when did it hit, and then what was the first step to implementing that?
Yeah, it hit. Well, this is kind of a fun story, but I'll try not to go along with it. But I remember we were about 2.5 years old as a church. We were running around 200 people.
Yeah.
I mean, that was probably us overinflating our numbers because that's what you do. You're like, we're probably more like 150, but you know how that is. Yeah. We probably had an Easter service that hit 200, so we're like, we're 200. That's what. Yep. It was like 198, but it's kind of like, I heard Sam Chan say, everything has always been hypothetical with numbers, right? Yeah. And he goes, that's just the way we always do counting in the church. He goes, how many people were in the upper room in Acts? What was our number? We always say 120, right? Well, no. The Bible says about 120 or around 120. So he's like, there was just some elder in the back going, yep, looks about 120 to me, right? Like, he goes, that's still happening today. We just, yep, looks about 200 to me, right? Like, we just guess, right? That's what we do. But we are in this place where I'm on a roll today with just knocking out all these church stereotypes. We were running about 200, maybe, 150, 200. And I remember we're young, so that's great to be running at 2.5 years old. But, in my mind, right, I'm like, we're going to be running thousands, right? That's the way we were.
Yeah.
And I read a book called Ready, Set, Grow.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those books all about lead teams. And it just was like, you read a book periodically, and as you're reading it, you're getting excited because you're like, I'm doing this. We're doing this. We're implementing this. And I read, a ton of books. So that doesn't always happen, but man, when I read that one, I'm like, So I read the whole book and I sat down my staff and I go, this is what I want to do. And I had the marker on the dry board and I said, here's where we're at now. And I kind of wrote everybody down and I said, this is where we got to go. And I started showing them, you need to get lead teams. And I started explaining the concept of it based on this book. And then the concept of investing in them. And we did. And we started learning that. And literally, this was in the late spring. Mm-hmm. By that next Easter, we broke 1,000 people.
Wow.
Now, there were some other things we implemented, but I think the reason why we broke 1,000, of course, we went down because it's Easter numbers are always inflated, and you settle in it,
right?
What your normal attendance is. But I believe the reason why we were able to do that is because we did the right things, but then we had the stability to handle that amount of people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's not just the fact that we had lead teams in place that made us break 1,000, but it's the fact that because we did, we're able to have stability that went into place that we didn't crumble under the weight of all of that. And that book was written by Pastor Scott Wilson, who about 3 years later, I randomly met and built a phenomenal relationship with, and now he's like a spiritual father to me. Had no idea who he was when I read the book. It was actually one of those that as I was reading books, Amazon pops up books that other people bought that are similar.
Yeah.
And that book kept popping up, and I liked the cover, and I bought it. Didn't even know who he was.
Yeah.
And his book radically changed the structure of our church.
Amazing.
But it all started from understanding the concept and then implementing it even while we were still small to be able to handle it when we grew.
Yeah, that's really good. So, quick note, go buy that book.
Really
go
good book.
read that book. But real quick, in closing, just talk to the person that wants to implement this. I mean, what did you learn through your implementation strategy? What would you do different if there's anything?
100% what I would do different is do not put a quote on it.
It's good.
I think at first our staff goes, I have to have X amount of people. So they threw anybody on the team as they could just to fill the roles.
Just filling us.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't just put somebody on your lead team just to have them on your lead team.
Yeah.
Make sure they have a purpose on your lead team. So identify areas and have that purpose. Make sure they have honor codes that reflect the church. They are a billboard for Jesus and a billboard for your church. So make sure what they're reflecting is what you want to be reflected, and make sure you're clear with their expectations of what you want from them.
That's good.
And lastly, and most importantly, invest in them. Invest. You need to invest more in them than what they're giving you.
Yeah.
Because if you are taking more than what you're giving them, they will burn out. But if you invest more and honor them more and celebrate them more than what they're giving you, you will always keep them fresh. They will always be excited, and they will have passion to be a part of your team. So overinvest and let that naturally flow. What you get from them flow from the overinvestment inside of your organization.
So good. So good.
All right, guys. That's another week. Wrapped it up.
Yeah.
You have any questions at all, hit Tyler at bloomhere.org. Hit him a email. He'll answer it, or we'll figure out how we can answer it.
That's right.
If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you doing? Get the subscribe going on. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you ring that bell. Share this episode out to anybody you think would be beneficial to, and rate, review it. It helps us get the word out.
Yeah.
And love you guys. And until next time, pray God's peace.